Getting back into the countdown, we get to number 5, our giant space turtle, Calus. As everybody knows, this raid boss is basically giant fucking robot that basically fucked you over like a YouTube order fucking his dildo every night. So, Calus comes in number 5, and he was our very first Destiny 2 raid boss. Now, I had to really debate whether or not I wanted to use the normal mode or the prestige mode. And the reason why I settled on prestige mode, because when you go back to when Bungie announced the prestige version of Leviathan, they said that they actually created that first, and they had to dumb down parts of that raid to make it into a normal raid. So the prestige version was the pinnacle version of how they created this raid. Now, when you look back at how they rolled out normal, and then you had the glitch, you had all the people that tried to cheese this motherfucker, even with all those things going against Leviathan, even with people seeing it for the first time on normal, I still went with the prestige version. Now, certain things were better in the normal version, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but ultimately, when Bungie said that the prestige version is their top version of this boss, I decided to go with it because it does have a few different unique elements compared to the normal mode. So, getting into our categories again, we have all 10 categories, once again, that we're going to be ranking. And the very first one that's coming up, communication, is the one that I do want to focus on. For Calus, I gave this a 4. Now, to me, a big part of communication is how much do you need to talk to your teammates during the fight. I've mentioned this in a couple of other raid bosses so far, but there are a number of times you basically get to the rally flag or you get to the opening part of the boss and you already know, I know I'm going to take the left, I know I'm going to get the right crystal, I'm going to get the sword, you shoot this motherfucker, and then after that, you almost don't communicate. Argos had that, Callie had that, Morgith had that, where basically once you set up shop, it's basically on autopilot. Fights that need communication during the actual encounter are ones that I give higher scores to, and Calus is one of those. In order to tell the people on the inside, the throne room, what correct plate or scion you need to punch, you have to tell them what symbols you're seeing on the other side. So that means 3 people need to clearly communicate what's happening to the other side. Now, on the prestige version, you also have the added fact that when you punch a scion, you know that one person is randomly going to get teleported back to the throne room, and the person who's the puncher is going right back into the void. You also have to communicate whether it was the left, the center, the right. That way people know so that they can shift over and they shoot the correct projections and scions. That way your team can pass this. This needs a lot of communication during the fight. You can set shit up ahead of time. There are also going to be 2 people that pretty much don't do anything when it comes to communication. Basically, they just have to know that they have to kill the Incendiors once they come out. But those guys who are defending the throne room, they still have a hard job. They just don't communicate as much as the guys who are doing the punching and the call-out symbols. But ultimately, Calus did need a lot of communication for this particular fight. Unique elements. I gave this a 3. I mean, we've seen teams get split up into 2, one going to another section, another getting teleported out. We saw that with Atheon, where obviously you got teleported into Mars or Venus or whatever the hell it was. So this is nothing new. In this encounter, you can actually control who are the people that are going to be going to the throne room and who are going to be the people that are coming back. The only thing that's randomized here is essentially once you punch a scion, one of the 3 people in the void room on the prestige version is going to get teleported back to the throne room. But otherwise, unique elements, you're punching shit, you're standing on plates, you're shooting a motherfucker, and you're calling out symbols. It's not incredibly unique, but it's unique enough that it should get a 3. Damage unlock. Again, this is kind of average. I gave this a 3. Going into the prestige version, we kind of already knew what to do from the normal mode. Normal mode took people a while to actually get the idea that calling out the symbols, you're going to see one that is not on his forehead. But once people got that logic and once people got that mechanic, you kind of knew how to do the damage unlock. So essentially in this version, the normal mode was much harder because we were seeing it and learning it for the first time. The prestige version, not as hard because essentially it's the same mechanic, but ultimately, I'm still going to give this a 3 because it did take a little while to figure out how to actually unlock the damage phase. Variety of strategy. Now keep in mind, over the past 2 years, there have been a whole bunch of new weapons that have come out that have allowed people to pretty much melt every boss. When Leviathan launched, we really didn't have too much of a variety to melt him. The main thing we used were rockets, particularly those with cluster grenades. If you had a cluster grenade rocket like the Curtain Call or the Sins of the Past, that was going to be your main strategy. After that, we got into sniping, we got into maybe some merciless, but ultimately, there wasn't too much of a strategy when it comes to this. Basically, you're going to stand on 4 plates, and whatever your highest DPS weapon is at the time, you're going to be able to melt him. Direct threat level of the boss. This is a 1. Essentially, Calus doesn't do much. He stands on a platform, he shoots at you with a laser, and then every now and then he bombs you with that lava shit that fills the room if you've gotten all the way further into the encounter, where you're at a 3rd or 4th encounter or something like that. But ultimately, he doesn't really stand that much of a threat. Mobility of the fight. I gave this a 3. I mean, the main part of the mobility is going to be in 2 parts. One is the unlock phase, where you're obviously in the void room, where people are going to have to communicate left side out, and that means a person shifts over. Right side out, that means another person shifts over. And then obviously the ability to run and punch the scions in particular. Then on top of that, we get to the damage phase, and you're going to have 4 plates in which you have to do your damage. So there is some mobility to this fight. It's not a lot. When it comes to the actual damage of Calus, you're basically just standing on a plate until the plate's no longer active or he decides to shoot at you. So there is a little bit of mobility, but essentially the 2 guys that are in the throne room, they're basically just avoiding ads. The guys punching, yeah, there is mobility there because you have to move around to the 4 plates, and then ultimately the guys are in the void room. Yes, so there is some mobility, but not compared to some of the other fights. Recovery. Can you recover from a mistake? And overall, this is a 2. The biggest problem to this one, if someone misses a projection, if someone manages to get booped over by a scion, someone doesn't shoot their scion, essentially you're fucked. Yeah, you can guess. You can kind of say, okay, just punch the dogs, maybe we get lucky, punch the cup, maybe you get lucky on that one. But once someone messes up in the void room, it's pretty much game over. Throne room, there's a little bit of leeway because obviously you'll have a revive in there, but once you're in the void room and you make a mistake, yeah, it's pretty much game over. Teammates needed for this fight. Ultimately, this is a 5, and a big reason why you need 5, although people can do this with 4, the big reason why you do need a 5th person is obviously you need somebody in the room to clear ads. Now, the one person who's obviously going to be the puncher and they're going to be rotating in and out, they can get by all those ads in the room. But again, we're going by a normal team. You need at least one person in that throne room to be able to clear something out, because if that room gets flooded with all those yellow bar incendiors, you are absolutely screwed at that point. On top of that, then they have to come back into the room, clear that out, and break Calus's overshield while the 3 people in the void room are shooting all the skulls. Ultimately, 4 is just too few. 5 is a realistic number. 6 obviously makes it the easiest, but 5 is the realistic number of teammates that you need in order to beat the Calus fight. Difficulty at launch, and again, this is a border between prestige versus normal. The normal version was difficult because we just weren't powerful enough to be able to fight Calus. Yeah, it took 5 hours. People were able to figure it out eventually, and once they got the mechanics down and the fact that you have to go to the void room and shoot all the skulls, people eventually got it. So the prestige mode was fairly easy because we knew exactly what to do going into that encounter. Obviously, there was a little difference between people getting teleported out and knowing who's got to go punch and move and shift and all that other shit. But essentially, if you look at the normal version, then the prestige version, overall, I gave this a 4 because I really do think the normal version was quite trickier than the prestige version because we had to see it for the first time. Once you saw it, it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of easy, but I don't want to penalize the prestige mode simply because people have already seen everything. So to me, I did give this overall a 4, and that's really based off of the normal mode. Final piece is rewards, and what did we get out of this? We got a quest for the Acreus. We didn't get much. We had to go face another fucking thing just to be able to get the Acreus shotgun. You had to go complete the arms dealer strike or whatever the hell that was. At the time, you could get the Midnight Coup, but eventually the prestige version kind of toned that down. The normal version gave you the Acreus quest, but the prestige version gave you a fucking skin. That was it. A skin. It's like, really? You're giving me a fucking gun skin for a gun that I already got in normal mode? You're not going to give me anything else? The prestige version of Leviathan also just gave you cosmetic armor. There was really nothing different other than a golden tinge to the actual armor, but overall, it was the same exact quality and value of the normal version. They just made it look a little bit different. So overall, the rewards were absolutely shitty for Calus, and because those rewards were so shitty, that really lowered the score of Calus overall to a 28, bringing it to number 5 on the countdown. So right now, we've gotten through 6 of our bosses, 4 more to go, and here's the funny thing, the next 2 guys tied. Yes, the next 2 guys are going to finish with the same exact point total, so there isn't going to be a number 4. There are going to be 2 number 3s, and I actually did a coin toss as to which video would come first, so it makes it look like that was the 4th and the other one was the 3rd, but we'll get into that in the next 2 videos. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit, and I'll see you guys in the next video.